Before Sunrise and In the Mood for Love are two of the most beloved romance films ever made, yet they couldn't be more different. One is spontaneous, free, unfolding in real time across the streets of Vienna. The other is restrained, quiet, and aching with all the things left unsaid in 1960s Hong Kong. Something really important to me in both films is the setting, and I really believe it serves as one of the main influences in the way in which romance is developed. In Before Sunrise, our characters end up in Vienna. With Jesse being American and Celine being French, this is a city which is foreign to both of them, and in this way it almost acts like a playground. It's a place where they don't feel constrained by their respective cultures, a place they have almost no connection to. There's a sense that there's no consequences to the actions our characters choose to take in the film, which is further reflected in the spontaneity of their decision making. Celine getting off the train despite knowing Jesse for only a few minutes, accepting the poet's offer, having sex in the park. The almost stream of consciousness-like, loose cinematography, where the camera simply follows these two characters through the streets of Vienna from the perspective of an invisible observer, creates a sense of natural freedom, like we're just watching human life in its purest form. The only limitation they have is their time together. These two factors combine to catalyse the development of their romance significantly. Billy Joel once said in a New York Times interview, when talking about his song Vienna, that Vienna was always the crossroads, between the Ottoman Empire and the Holy Roman Empire. So the metaphor of Vienna has the meaning of a crossroad. It's a place of intercourse, of exchange. It's the place where cultures commingle. You get great beer in Vienna, but you also get brandy from Armenia. It was a place where cultures commingled. I think this metaphor carries a lot of meaning when applied to Before Sunrise. The city almost represents fleeting connection, the temporary mixing of human life. There's an element of serendipity, almost like fate could have anything in store. Being the crossroads between the East and West, it also reflects the unexpected connection between two people of different backgrounds, in this case American and French, and its transient nature further reflects the short time our two characters have together. It functions as an almost liminal location, not void of identity by any means, but almost outside the realm of time and space, intensifying the development of romance in the sense that these two characters only have each other. In the aforementioned song, Billy Joel references the city directly with the line, "Take the phone off the hook and disappear for a while. Vienna waits for you." There's an idea that it's this mystical, transitory land where dreams come true, which the film also portrays through both the various filming locations and use of cinematography. Jesse even says it himself.
I feel like this is some dream world we're in, you know?
In this case, the serendipitous discovery our characters make is their love for each other, and because of this we're made to see Vienna as a city of romance. First, we should probably ask the question, what makes a city romantic? There's no one true answer to this, but in my opinion there are three key elements. Firstly, architecture and scenery. Generally, we're more drawn to quiet, intimate places than bustling atmospheres in a romantic setting. Dimly lit cafes, cobblestone streets, quiet walks by the riverside. Proximity and attentiveness breeds emotional intimacy, and Before Sunrise demonstrates this with its various settings. A lot of the film takes place at night, where the streets are, for the most part, quiet. We have the cemetery, the cafe where they meet the fortune teller, the riverbank where they meet the poet, and of course the record store. The lighting is consistently natural and highlights both the characters and the backdrop equally, which gives a sense that their romance is infused in their shared location. They merely exist in the world. The next element is culture. There's something strangely enchanting about being in a place known for producing some of history's most impactful artworks and stories. In Before Sunrise, Linklater makes a point of constantly surrounding our main characters in scenery which fits into this mould. The Maria Theresienplatz, the Art History Museum. These locations often lead our characters into very philosophical discussions. For example, Celine's monologue about the girl she saw in the cemetery when she was a child.
Now I'm 10 years older and she's still 13, I guess.
And thus serve as a landscape for the meaningful conversations they have, which are essentially the basis for their emotional connection. The final element which I believe makes the location romantic is its sounds. This can tie into scenery in some ways, hearing the gentle sound of a river flowing or the rustling of leaves. It can be even more direct, for example soft jazz in the background of a restaurant. There's nothing inherently romantic about any of the sounds in Before Sunrise. However, the film emphasises Jesse and Celine's relationship by ensuring every sound source comes from the city itself. Their conversation takes up the foreground of the audio, but beyond that, we're rarely ever treated to an external soundtrack, and instead are simply surrounded by the natural noises of Vienna. This creates an intimate experience in that the focus is held on the connection between these two characters, but also in the sense that the immersion is heightened. It's like we're in the city with them, listening to a love song in a record booth, the deafening quietness of the church, the music accompanying the birth dance. It feels special. In the Mood for Love, we're introduced to two characters who both live in 1960s Hong Kong. Contextually, this is important. The 60s was a period when Hong Kong flourished, growing in wealth and population at an unprecedented rate.
And every day, Boeings bring in businessmen, engineers and economists keen to observe and join in the expansion of Asia's fastest growing economy.
Colonial-era buildings were replaced by high-rise apartment blocks, and industrialization took its hold, shifting the economy from one based on trade to one centered around manufacturing. With this came a growing sense of local identity, distinct from both British colonial rule and mainland Chinese influence. It was a seminal decade of cultural convergence and quiet tension, a place where tradition and modernity coexisted in a sort of transitional space. I think this parallels the portrayal of Vienna as a place of liminality in Before Sunrise, but this idea serves two completely different purposes in each film. In Before Sunrise, our characters feel a great sense of freedom from being almost lost in a city where there's so much cultural clash and lack of consequence that they see it as their own personal adventure, allowing them to make decisions on a whim. Vienna's identity is a cultural crossroads where languages, histories, and ideologies blur, frees the characters from the weight of their own realities. The anonymity and fluidity of the city turns Vienna into a playground for Jesse and Celine, a neutral place where they can explore intimacy without the pressure of consequence. In the Mood for Love, the same sense of liminality, born from cultural convergence and social transition, only serves to entrench restraint rather than enable freedom. Instead of creating possibility, the context reinforces emotional boundaries, hemming our characters into tradition, social expectation, and being forced under the watchful eyes of their community. Wong Kar-wai tries hard to evoke this sort of claustrophobic atmosphere through his visual choices. The cramped corridors, the narrow staircases, the tiny rooms. The positioning of the camera also adds to this claustrophobic feel, often positioned behind something like a doorway while half the screen is blocked, as if the space is so small that even we, an invisible observer, don't have room to see. The characters have to physically brush past each other to get from point A to point B. This is in stark contrast to Before Sunrise, where the settings are always open. Besides a few key intimate moments such as the record booth scene or the tramcar scene, the camera is always following Jesse and Celine through wide, open spaces. The cemetery, the fair, the town plaza, the river. Their physical intimacy and closeness is one which has to be built through effort, whereas in the Mood for Love, it comes as a result of their surroundings. Through this one concept, the two films encapsulate their main themes perfectly. Before Sunrise, which is centered around the idea of spontaneity and romantic escape, sees our two characters build a connection through conversation, acting on a whim, and then eventually becoming close in the physical space through an almost awkward trial and error. Jesse trying to touch Celine's hair or asking to kiss her in the Ferris wheel.
Are you trying to say you want to kiss me?
In the Mood for Love portrays small, accidental moments of intimacy, the sense of unspoken longing and desire which leads to palpable tension. In the scenes where Mrs. Chan and Mr. Chow pass by each other on the stairs, not a single word is spoken, and yet the anticipation is so high you almost have to hold your breath. It's these initial moments of fate and unprecedented attraction which eventually lead to their connection. It perfectly encapsulates the film's theme of love and desire developing in an atmosphere of silence and repression. And it's despite this repression, or maybe because of it, that In the Mood for Love still remains a deeply romantic film. The 1960s is almost idealized as a defining era for Hong Kong's identity, and Wong Kar-wai, having grown up in this period and experiencing this transitory decade firsthand, seeks to evoke this nostalgic feel with extreme attention to detail. The film feels like a memory of a city and way of life slowly fading. By all categories mentioned earlier, Hong Kong is absolutely portrayed as a romantic place, and the vintage colour palette and film grain add a sense of wistfulness, sentimentality. The connection the characters build is almost within the confines of this reminiscent feel, which adds a whole new layer of romanticism, but also regret. This brings me to the next way in which the films differ, their portrayal of time. This connection between setting and emotion is what gives the film a painfully aching sense of longing, not just for a love that never fully materializes, but for a version of Hong Kong which no longer exists. Wong Kar-wai is a master at manipulating time. In the Mood for Love plays like a romanticized recollection of events. It constantly just lingers. Repeated scenes of passing by each other on the stairs, the repeating musical motifs. Everything plays like a routine, almost like a looping of time. This gives the sense that what's happening isn't in the present, but more like a memory. Wong Kar-wai doesn't simply tell a love story, he shows us what it feels like to remember one, years later, when the details have faded but the emotions remain vivid. The painful mixture of remembering what could have been versus the tenderness of what was. The city too becomes part of that memory. The traditional cheongsams, the food, the intimate diner booth, the mist of cigarette smoke in an office. It all creates a world. One thing I've always loved about Wong Kar-wai is his ability to evoke a sense of nostalgia and beauty for a place and time you never even existed in. I think he does this perfectly in Fallen Angels particularly, but In the Mood for Love is no different. Since we know this world has since disappeared, its presence in the film carries a built-in melancholy, just like our characters' relationship. Just as the characters are unable to return to a time where they could have made different choices, perhaps if they had been braver or not restrained by conservative norms, the audience can never return to this version of Hong Kong. Both love and setting are irrevocably tied to the past, and the film sets out to capture it fading. This sets it apart from Before Sunrise, where time is not a burden but a catalyst. Jesse and Celine know that they only have a single night together. This awareness leads them to act quickly, to explore their passion and develop their connection before it's too late. They rush to get to know each other, immediately jumping into a game of Q&A the second they land in Vienna. They have no intention of taking it slow, establishing physical intimacy only 30 minutes in. In the Mood for Love, time stretches, almost endlessly, and yet nothing can be done. The characters exist in a painful limbo of longing and restraint. Opportunity passes by quietly and tenderly. Their romance is marked not by dramatic decisions such as those in Before Sunrise, but rather by absence, silence, by things left unresolved. In one of the very first scenes in Before Sunrise, Jesse tries to convince Celine to get off the train with him in Vienna.
Jump ahead. 10, 20 years, okay? And you're married. And only your marriage doesn't have that same energy that it used to have. You know, you start to blame your husband. You start to think about all those guys you've met in your life and what might have happened if you picked up with one of them.
I feel this draws a direct parallel to In the Mood for Love. Both characters have to stay stuck in their loveless marriages, always thinking about what could have been. Jesse and Celine have the privilege of jumping at this opportunity, so they never have to question it. And while the film ends with our main characters going back to their respective countries and the audience never knowing what happens to them after that, of course if you've never watched the sequels, there's still a sense of hope, a bittersweet ending that leads us into the idea of maybe someday, whereas In the Mood for Love takes a similarly bittersweet tone but removes the hope, turning it into a story of never could, with Mr. Chow ultimately sealing his feelings of regret within a hole in Angkor Wat in Cambodia. The sound design drastically differs in each film, but serves as a vital device in both. If you strip back Before Sunrise, it's essentially just a conversation between two people. The romance is the dialogue, and it works so well because it feels so real. They fall in love through getting to know each other, through their deep musings and philosophical conversations. They have distinct personalities and methods of communication. Jesse is often the one leading conversations while Celine pushes back. These subtle characteristics are what makes the dialogue so authentic, and its naturalism mirrors the spontaneity of their decisions. It's improved and flows with no clear structure. Talking is how they build their connection, through being vulnerable with each other and sharing. My favourite line in the film is around an hour in, when they're talking about the concept of love itself, and how important it is to each of them. Celine says,
If there's any kind of magic in this world, it must be in the attempt of understanding someone, sharing something.
It perfectly encapsulates the same magical feeling of their connection in the film, which, just like she says, is purely built through understanding each other and sharing. They grow to be vulnerable over time. Celine carries herself as someone very strong-willed and hard-headed, and one of the first things she does when Jesse sits down with her is insult him for being an American, whilst Jesse tries to immediately impress her through humour. These parts of their personalities don't disappear, but they open up to each other and show more about their true selves. Celine's story about remembering the 13-year-old girl's grave is her first true moment of vulnerability. She's sharing her own self-discovery with Jesse, and he ends up doing the same with his thoughts on his upbringing. In the Mood for Love, dialogue is sparse, restrained and formal. The emotional weight lies more in silence than conversation. When our characters do interact, it's often purely logistical or formal. They never allow themselves to truly open up to each other verbally. Even when they do express their emotions, it's through a filter, like the scene where they roleplay each other's partners. Verbal connection doesn't exist. Few words are shared, and one of the only times where they're truly alone and get the opportunity to talk to each other once their yearning is at an all-time high, it once again becomes physical connection, with Mrs. Chan crying as she hugs Mr. Chow, the only way she's allowed to express her feelings. This scene is shot through a row of iron bars, further symbolising how trapped the characters feel. Unlike Jesse and Celine's relationship, where we can clearly see what made them fall in love with each other, with Mrs. Chan and Mr. Chow, it's a soul tie with no rhyme or reason behind it. All we see is love and emotion. I think this reinforces the point that the film plays out like a collection of memories, but we aren't sure of any specific moments or interactions that made them fall in love, only the way it made them feel within the space they created for themselves. Their feelings are shared through tender gazes, silent stares, spoken pauses. Our characters are forced into the confines of a world run by repression, societal pressure and emotional claustrophobia, their constrained dialogue reflecting the cramped nature of their physical spaces. Jesse and Celine have the luxury of being able to say everything they're feeling. Mr. Chow and Mrs. Chan feel everything but say nothing. In terms of music, Before Sunrise uses almost none, giving our characters' words the centre stage, whereas In the Mood for Love uses music instead of words. Yumeji's theme is the main motif used in the film, and brings us back to the idea of looping time. This motif works because it encourages the viewer to recall all these small moments of intimacy and emotional repression they've already seen from every time the song was featured before, leaving the audience in a similar situation as the characters, haunted by the memory of what could have been. Musically, the violin solo is romantic, with stretched out tones representing their desire for one another at the core of their being. Meanwhile, the string orchestra in the background plays an almost taunting and unsettling pizzicato, as if to describe the harsh truth that their relationship will never work out. The actors' performances in both films serve to enhance these themes and the emotional weight of the dialogue, or lack thereof. Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy's delivery is loose, natural. The script was actually developed in collaboration with Richard Linklater, with the two main actors contributing heavily. In the Mood for Love, Tony Leung and Maggie Cheung rely heavily on body language, micro-expressions. The way Mrs. Chan twiddles her thumbs in anxiety when talking to Mr. Chow alone, or the way Mr. Chow holds his cigarette tenderly, engulfing himself in a cloud of mist. Their performance serves to demonstrate the emotional repression through micro-movements alone. In this way, the film perfectly demonstrates the different languages of love. Jesse and Celine build up their connection through external articulation of internal thoughts, discovering their emotions through words. On the other hand, Mr. Chow and Mrs. Chan's love is built through internalization. Their silence isn't a lack of communication, but rather a different language entirely. They understand each other in the spaces in between speech, which is almost comparable to what Celine says at one point.
You know, I believe if there's any kind of God, it wouldn't be in any of us. Not you or me, but just this little space in between.
As a final point, it's useful to talk about the sounds of the city here. With Wong Kar-wai wanting to evoke a nostalgic feeling for this period of Hong Kong, the sounds are often quite gentle. The tender clicking of a phone call, the soft falling of rain. I've noticed that even when there is dialogue between other characters, external atmospheric sounds like thunder always take precedence. While Hong Kong was actually quite densely populated in the 1960s, it doesn't feel that way in the film. Wong Kar-wai remembers it as his own world. We don't get the same bustling sounds of the city as we do with the portrayal of Vienna in Before Sunrise. Instead, we focus on the small aspects that made Hong Kong what it was, truly immersing us in that distinct period of time, with nostalgia and reminiscence at the forefront of everything. Before Sunrise is more real in this way. It happens in real time, and rather than it feeling like we're being given a glimpse into another world, like with Wong Kar-wai, Linklater shows us the characters forming their relationship entirely as it happens, complete with the reality around them and all its imperfections. The background noise of the people talking in the streets and bars is noisy, prevalent, and adds to the atmosphere. We're experiencing Vienna through these characters as they do so for the first time, whereas In the Mood for Love wants to show us a memory of a distant time which we can never get back. To reflect, in Before Sunrise we understand the relationship as it's forming, because we're hearing every detail firsthand. In the Mood for Love, we understand the relationship through how it lingers and is remembered. While both films portray a deep level of intimacy, they offer two different types. One spoken and unfolding, the other unspoken and remembered. When talking about Wong Kar-wai films, you can't skip over the visuals. The cinematography in both films is excellent, but they both use it very differently to express the languages of love. I've mentioned the camera movement in Before Sunrise already, but its observational nature truly reinforces the film's main themes. The camera is almost invisible, following Jesse and Celine completely naturally. It feels as if you're eavesdropping on two people, but in an unintrusive way. There aren't many close-ups, and we get lots of distant and tracking shots of the couple together, allowing their conversation in the space between them to breathe as the connection grows. Cuts are minimal as we simply follow them through the city, lingering in the intimacy they share together. In the Mood for Love crafts its shots in a more deliberate way, with the camera positioning always being meticulous. The shots are tight and often obstructed, representing the trapped nature of our characters, but also perfectly positioned to feel as if they're suspended in time, preserving the memory of both their relationship and the world of 1960s Hong Kong. The slow motion shots provide a similar function here, adding another layer of remembrance. The framing often cuts the characters off, rarely giving us a clear, wide shot of them together, symbolic of the impossibility of their relationship. The lighting in Before Sunrise is often natural and soft, creating a sense of realism and warmth. The streetlights at night add a gentle glow to the scene, making it feel more romantic without being overly stylized. The colour palette is highly realistic and feels true to life. The dominant colours in the Mood for Love are red, green and yellow. Red is featured dominantly in the hotel scenes where Mr. Chow and Mrs. Chan roleplay their partners. Everything is graded in this colour, from the curtains to the doors and the furniture. We all associate red with lust and love, and it's perfectly used in this setting to outline the romantic tension between the two characters, which at this point is at an all-time high. Green is used a lot in the restaurant scene where Mr. Chow and Mrs. Chan finally acknowledge that their partners have been cheating on them with each other. Green symbolises nature, growth and renewal, and in this sense the characters are taking a step forward towards a new beginning, deepening their connection. A warm yellow coats the scene when Mrs. Chan comes back to visit her old apartment. As she stares out of the window, lost in nostalgia, we experience the comfort those memories bring to her through the colour palette. The lighting is fascinating. The dark staircases and alleyways which almost visually describe the all-encompassing repression these characters feel surrounded by, only ever lit up by warm yellow lights representing the deep affection they had for each other, the tender comfort their connection brought. In the Mood for Love uses lighting and colour expressionistically to heighten emotion and memory. Before Sunrise opts for a more naturalistic and observational style, rarely drawing attention to itself and simply reflecting what our characters are experiencing. Linklater allows the city to breathe so we can focus on our characters' words and connection. In the Mood for Love, restricted by silence just like the characters, has to use other methods to express and contain emotion, encoding it visually to ground us in memory and mood. Ultimately, both approaches serve the film's emotional goals and their different languages of love. Before Sunrise wants us to feel like we're there, walking with the characters through a real city, experiencing love as it happens, whereas In the Mood for Love wants us to remember something already lost, feeling the weight of an emotion through the texture of the image itself. This brings us to the ending of both films. Both of them have iconic closing scenes which leave us with a lingering emotional resonance, but in completely different ways. Before Sunrise ends with an uncertain hope. Jesse and Celine part ways, knowing they may never see each other again, but also holding the possibility that they will in their hearts. Their goodbye is tender and unresolved. They plan to meet again in a year, and their final words are later, implying a continuation of their relationship. There's no overwhelming sense of regret or happiness. It's almost neutral, representing the ephemeral nature of their connection. The final montage of all the places they visited in Vienna is not sorrowful like it is when Mrs. Chan revisits her old apartment. Instead, it's filled with a quiet reverence. Like Jesse and Celine left their mark here, and the city will remember them forever. It's an open ending and reflects the film's themes of romantic idealism and spontaneity, leaving you questioning what their ultimate destiny is. In the Mood for Love ends with a crushing regret and silence, with Mr. Chow permanently sealing his love away. There's no dialogue, reunion, or catharsis, just lingering and sorrow, forever unresolved. The sudden shift from Hong Kong to Cambodia is extremely jarring and reinforces the feeling that their relationship, and the world of 1960s Hong Kong, has been entirely lost to time. Where Before Sunrise gives us the kind of ending that mirrors the excitement and possibility of falling in love from a standpoint of ideal romanticism, In the Mood for Love gives us the aching heartbreak of a love that never got to live. What I love about cinema is its ability to provide us with the opportunity to feel things we've never lived and remember things we've never lost. Maybe, like Celine says, love is in the attempt to understand someone. And maybe, like Mr. Chow, we carry that attempt with us, even when it's impossible and buried in silence. Overall, Before Sunrise and In the Mood for Love are two sides of the same coin. One explores what it feels like to fall in love in the moment, and the other explores what it feels like to live with the memory of love that could never have been. One gives us conversation, freedom, and possibility. The other gives us silence, structure, and loss. The characters express their love through different languages and exist in entirely different worlds, but both films understand something essential: that love, in any form, is transformative. Whether it lasts one night or never fully begins, it leaves something behind. A space, a memory, a feeling.